Well, welcome to part 13 of the multi-language adventure game, and today we're going to be adding some items. So we're writing the item class and adding some items to the game. I'll just show you what the end result is of what we're doing today. So if I hit the play button, as before, we've got this, the debug mode is on. Do you want to disable it? So again, I'm going to put no, I don't want to disable it. And you'll notice that we get now an increased console size with this listing on it. And it says the dictionary shared items contains the following objects. So we've now created 4 objects: a key card, a torch, a book, and a key. And it tells us the class they belong to here, which is an item.item. And then this is the description of each of those items. So these are the ones that we're going to be using in our game. They're just kind of random things. The only one that with any real use is this one here, the door key. When we add an enemy later on, the key will be contained inside the enemy, and when the enemy is killed, the key will be dropped. But obviously that's not, we haven't got that far just yet. So we're just creating these 4 items, and then press enter to continue. It resizes the console back to the normal thing, and then from then on I think it runs pretty much as we did before. Let me just check. So we choose our character, and again we've got just a description of the character. The characters available. Oh, actually that should list the characters available. I'll check that in a moment. Then enter to continue. Gives us our strength and so on. And I think that's pretty much the end of the game. Yep, there we go. So just enter to quit. So we'll step through everything in a second and just show how everything is working and how it's set up. So let me show you first of all the new class that we've created, the item class here. So we'll get that up. Now this is not the equivalent of a static class. This is a full proper class, so that we can create different items, as you saw in that demonstration a couple of minutes ago. So, but it's in its own file. The file is called item.py, and then inside there we've got the class item with a capital letter. You'll see the significance of that in just a moment. So it has a constructor, which is the def init, which is found in all Python classes, and we're passing to it obviously the self parameter, which is required in Python classes, and then the name, description, then a list of craft items. We're not using this at the moment, but the thinking behind this is that if you have an item such as I don't know, a belt, you could perhaps construct that from leather and metal. So it just gives the possibility of making an item from other items. So it's not going to be used at this stage, but just to have it in there in case we needed it later. So a list of items that would make up this particular item. Uses, again, you could have something that has a limited use, so that you could only use it once, or you can use it infinitely, or that type of thing, so that you could make it so that if it's a one-use item, say a key, for example, once the key has been used, the use is down to 0, and it's removed from the game. So that's the possibility there. A container, again, we're not using it at the moment, but you could, for example, have a chest. So a chest could be an item on its own, or you could have the chest being a container, so that you could have, for example, you open the chest and inside it there is another item. So obviously you would set that item's container to be the chest. So this is a way of kind of interacting between items. We're not actually using it in this game, but it's there ready for use if and when you wanted to expand it. So we've once these have been passed into the constructor, they're being stored in the self._ versions of these names. Now, the reason for doing this is that Python's way of dealing with the concept of private and public variables is difficult, to say the least. So a kind of accepted method of doing it is if you have an underscore in it, that means it's private to the class. Don't refer to it directly. There's nothing to stop you doing that, but you can. Now, there's also in Python two ways of getting properties from a class. So, for example, this name here, we can get that using let's start with the description. So this is the description. So it would be something like a Yale key. So the more traditional way of getting a property out of a class is to use getters and setters, which are these here. So you have a separate method, which is getDescription, which returns self_description, and that will give you back the text that stores in description. And in order to set it, you can have a setDescription, and then you can say that self_description equals the value that you send to it. So this is used in this where you create an item, such as a torch, using item.item. Because this is the item class within the item file, you have to use item.item, and then you give it a name, torch, and then a description, a torch. So that's given it your basic name and description. This is a default value of empty list. That's the default value of 0. That's the default value of empty string. So you don't need to pass those to create a torch item. Then to get its description, you can use torch getDescription, which is using this function here, and then that will return you the contents of self.description. So this is the more traditional way. It's used in Lua. We don't have any other way of doing it. It's used in Java, but in Python and C# you can use a more elaborate form of getters and setters, which we'll be showing you just down here. So let's take the name, for example. The way you can deal with a name is to use this, what's called a decorator, which goes at the top of, and we just give it the straightforward name. But because of the decorator, we can then return self_name. But it allows us to use that name directly. What I mean by that is, with the description, in order to get the description from it, we had to use torch getDescription with open and closed brackets. But to get the name, we can just say print torch name, torch.name, because of this more elaborate way of doing it. And so we use the same function signature, defName, but by decorating it with @name.setter, this allows us to set the value of self_name, so that we can again use torch.name equals whatever we want to set it to, as well as print torch.name to get it. So these are more elaborate getters and setters, a more modern approach, and C# has the same equivalents, which we'll look into. So I've just used the description in the kind of old-fashioned way just to show you how it works, and the more modern getters and setters here. At the moment we don't have any other methods inside the class. All we've got is the getters and setters for our properties. So that's the item class. Let's go to main, and I think we'll step through getting this set up. Now, main really hasn't changed from what it was before. Resizing the console, clearing it, checking whether in debug mode, and then we're doing game load game as before. So this is fairly much the same as it was. So let's go to game. Now the load game, as before, we're setting up the player's characters. Now this time we've got a new one here, which is create default items. So I'm running that before displaying the introduction and before modifying the player. So this is a new function here, create default items. So let's hit the stop button at that point and we'll come and run that through so you can see how it works. So we're back to main, we're going to start the game. Debug is on. Yes, we do want to leave it in. We do not want to disable it, so no, I don't want to disable it. And we're now going to create the default items. So let's press F11. And this is the new function, create default items. The reason for doing this is that later on we'll be loading these in from a text file. But you need to have like a kind of basic default set, just so that the game will run even without any reading from a text file. So that's why I've called them the default items. So we are calling this new function add to items, which is up here, which I'll show you in a second. And then we're creating 4 items: the key card, a magnetic strip property of Premier Inns, torch, magnificent, well, you can read that for yourselves. So a key card, torch, book and key. So let me show you how this actually makes those items by stepping through it. So we'll press F11. So it's going up to the shared add to items, and it's taking the key name, which is key card, the description, a magnetic strip, craft items is an empty table, uses is 0 by default, and the container is an empty string. So items are now contained in the dictionary that we created in Shared a long time ago. So this has always been present, but we just never used it so far. So this is where we're going to keep all of our things. So at the moment we're going to have a dictionary of items. Later on we'll have a dictionary of locations, a dictionary of enemies, but for the time being we're just using this dictionary of items in the shared folder so that it's available to the whole game. So let's go back to game.py. So because it's a dictionary, to add something to it you use the update, not the append. So it's shared items update, not append, and then you put in to it in a curly braces the dictionary item with its index, which is the key name, which is of course key card, and then you, for the other part of the dictionary beyond this colon, this is the dictionary value. So this is the key of the dictionary, and this is the value. Oops, I didn't mean to screw that up. And this is the value, item.item, and then we've got the key name, description, and all the stuff that was up here. So if I press F11, that will get us into the actual item class. So we're now inside the item class. So we've passed to the constructor our name, which is key card, and our description, which is a magnetic strip key card property of Premier Inns. The others are empty. So this is just going to go through and set the internal variables, self underscore name, description, craft items, etc. So we'll press F11, and we've given those the appropriate values. So key card, a magnetic thing, blah, blah, blah. So that's changed, set up our first item, and that item is stored in our dictionary inside the shared class. So that dictionary will hold all of the items. So that's done the constructor's work. So we are finished there. F11 again. So we have now created so far the first item, and we're now doing exactly the same with the next few items. So no need to step through those. That's just going to go and create 4 more items. So I'll run it through until we get to there. Now the shared debug is on, so this is where we want to show the items that we have created. So if the debug is off, such as when the game is finished and ready to play, then this would not show. So this is, or indeed if you choose to not show the debug information, this won't show. So this is just a little routine to print out onto the console. So I've set the width to 112. That's an arbitrary figure that happens to just fit in all the descriptions into a console that pretty much fills the window. So it has been engineered a bit for demonstration purposes. So the width here is kind of a bit artificial. So let's just set the width, and then we're going to resize the console to that width, 112 characters by 25. So at the moment, if I bring up the console, it's 80 by 25. That's why I moved it there, so that it expands out this way. So if I just click on there, so we're going to resize the console. Let me just show you how that's done. We'll press F11. Let's Control plus so we can see what we're doing here. So we're calling resize by passing it the width of 112 and the height of 25. And are we going to clear it as well? Yes, we are. We're going to clear the console. So this is now going to set up these internal variables. So we press F11. So that's setting the window width and window height, which is the class variables. Up here, window width, window height, so that we can refer to them from the script if we needed to get the width and height of the console at other side. And then we're resetting the size using the OS system, and in Windows it's F mode, window width, window height. So it's mode 1112, 25. If we were in any other operating system, it would use this ANSI sequence. So that's the escape sequence for resize, and then it'll send the height, width, and this T at the end of it. So that works in Linux and Mac. So we'll resize the console, press F11, and if I hit the console back again, you'll see it's now resized to the full width of that. Now because I said do clear, it's going to clear and then clear CLS, return 0, and we're back where we started from. So we've now got our nice resized console, and then we're printing out these couple of bits here. So let me just hit the F11, so the dictionary shared items, let's show you those two. So we've got the dictionary shared item contains the following objects: key name, object description. Then it's going to print that across the width of the screen is this UTF-8 character here. So let's print that. There we go. And now it's going to print out each of the items that are inside shared.items items. Now that looks slightly confusing. The reason for that is that we are dealing here with a dictionary called shared.items. And the way Python deals with dictionaries is you can have a dot items, which is the items in the dictionary. So it's slightly unfortunate that I called this dictionary items, because it's now confusing you with Python's inbuilt dot items, because they also have a dot keys. So we're going for the key and value. So we're getting the key and value out of each of the items stored in our dictionary of items. So sorry for the confusion there, but that's as I say, I should have perhaps called my dictionary something else like objects. No, that would have even caused more confusion. No, let's just leave it as items. So what that's doing is it's printing out the let's just press the F11 first. So it's printing out with this left justification the key, and the key is key card. Now the value is an object. So this type thing here gives you the type of object. And then this str here turns that type into its string. So what we're looking for is what type of object have we got here by using the type function. But that's not human readable, so we need to make it into a string. So we're turning the type of object, then justifying it by 24 spaces. And then we're doing the value get description, which is again calling the get description function from the value of the value here is of course the object, our first item object, and that's going to print out the contents there. So if I hit F11 now, and I'll show you, right, we're getting the description, so it's going to pass back the self description, which is a magnetic strip keycard property of Premiere INS, and that should now appear on here. So there's the key card, the key, then it's got this class item.item, which is how we've used the type value to string is this class item. So that gives you the type of object that we're dealing with, and then the value get description is the description of that object. So if you're not familiar with classes and objects, this might be a bit confusing, but what we've done is to create a sort of a super variable. So it's holding a lot of information about our first item, which is its name is a key card, and its description is a magnetic strip key card, and the whole thing's being stored in a dictionary. So it does get a bit hair-raising, but you'll get used to it as you go. So we're going to print the rest of the items out, because remember the shared items, you'll get a better idea when we do this in C#, because you can actually see all the listings of everything inside dictionaries and things, which are much better debugging than it is in Python. So we'll get to that in due course. So let's get the rest of these printed out. Okay, so that's got that done. So we've got our 4 items with their keycard, torch, book and key. They're all of class item, and it gives you the descriptions of them there. Now it's asking us to press enter to continue, and then after it's done that, it's going to resize the console. So let me hit the green button. So enter to continue, and then it's going to resize that. So F11, which we've done already, and clear it. And then that one's finished. Let me show you the resized and cleared console. That's ready to go. And now we are going to back to where we were on the previous one, where we're going to display the introduction and modify the player just like we did on the last one. So that's pretty much the end of what we're doing today. I'll just finish that off for you so you can see how it's running from there. Make sure the green button is pressed. There we go. So as before, it wants our name. So this is all from the last episode, choosing the character and sending out the characters and so on. The demonstration I did right at the beginning, I didn't have the names in here. That was just a minor change in the code to fix that. So we're now done. I think this is the final bit. Yep, there we go. So thank you for playing, and enter to quit. So I'll go through the bits of code that we have changed. So first of all, we've got this new class item. Don't bother about all this stuff. In fact, what I would suggest you do is, instead of using the getters and setters in this old-fashioned form, to put the description in this format down here. so that you've got them all kind of consistent. So that's your class. Then, of course, on the game, make sure that you import shared player, our new item class, and the narrator, so make sure you've got those imports in there. Did we do any more to the game? Yes, we did. We did this create default items, so I'll leave that there for you to look at if you wanted to pause and type it in. As I say, it's all available on the GitHub, so you can download it, but I find it more useful to actually type this stuff in. It gets me working out what's happening and how it works. Then display intro is the same as it was before, so don't think there's anything new there. The load game has now got this create default items in there, and of course that means that we did have this additional add to items here, which was empty before. So I think that's the only changes in game.py. Main, don't think that's changed at all. No, that should be the same. Player, I haven't altered. No, that's the same as it was before. Shared is the same as it was before. So there we go. That's the Python version of adding our item class and creating some items for use in our game. It doesn't actually use them just yet, but at least they're ready there to be used.